Stefanie Boyce.
Yes, Kimberly Stewart.
Adore you. I'm so excited you're here. Tell the people who are listening, for those who have not had the great fortune of hanging out with you and drinking a glass of wine, what you're up to, who you are, how you fill your days, who fills your days. Tell us about you.
Yeah. So I am out here in Southern California, and I live and work at the Oaks. It is a beautiful 240-acre retreat center. And Miles Adcox got together with Bob Goff. Miles is out in Nashville at Onsite. And then Bob is writer, speaker, which you well know, Kim.
Yes, I do.
And they got together and they purchased the Oaks. And we have about 40 bedrooms out here. And we run our own programming. We do third-party rentals, and then we help Bob and Miles with their stuff too. Mm-hmm. So it's fun. I've been here for about 15 months, and my main role is Jane of all trades. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm called a director, but I think what that just means is I clean toilets and welcome guests and do anything that is required of me. My favorite thing to do out here is to lead our flagship programming, and I also do yoga. Mm-hmm. And I am a spiritual director, and I have beautiful children. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying yes to whatever God has for me. So
I love it. I love it. And I want to hear more about how all that happened. I do know that you moved to the Oaks at a very strange time in our world history. It was like 45 seconds before COVID, right? I mean, you moved, you made this shift, and then silence.
Yeah, if you've been friends with Bob long, you know that Bob has called numerous times with big news. And so the first time Bob called me, he said, "Hey, Stefanie, do you want to go to Uganda?"
Right. Like tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah. And then a few years later, he called and he goes, "I bought a camp." And I'm like, "Awesome, yay, Bob. Like, congratulations. I live in Illinois. I don't know what this has to do with me." And he invited us to come out to see if we'd want to move out here. And then we said yes, which was super scary. But within months, we had packed our house and we were on our way. And then the last box literally was like thrown out the house. I marked it with an Instagram post. And the next day, Earth shut down with the pandemic. So here I am on 240 acres with a raging pandemic happening around me, with no friends, no family. Seriously. And we're like, did we make the right decision? Right. I don't know about your listeners, but I feel like that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. Is like we take this leap of faith and we're like, okay, I think we've got enough clues to jump. I'm jumping now. And then we jump and we're like, wait.
The other side looks good. The other side looks good. Go back.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but it was good. It was, obviously for people that were affected by the pandemic, like my heart goes out to them, for sure. But for us and all that we had endured in the years previously, this was a really helpful season for us to get grounded and to reconnect and go slow. So it was a good thing for us.
Good. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your delightful husband, because you both made this jump and we have heard about what you do at the Oaks and your role. And I have to say, I have not told you this privately yet, so why not publicly on a podcast? I was talking with someone recently who you know, and who came to one of your retreats, one of the flagship retreats. And this person is not an incredibly effusive person. So not super aggressive with the compliments. And he could not contain how phenomenal you were and what a beautiful thing you bring to that space and to those days. And he just kept saying she was built for this. She was made for this. And he also said, I really didn't know what to expect. And Stefanie just allowed entrance into this just beautiful weekend where he learned so much and really kind of remembered who he was. And so I know what you do at the Oaks, but tell us about Justin. And I have an ulterior motive with this question. I love to watch you guys together. You're far too stable and healthy to be a reality show. But if you were, I would totally watch her all the time. You're just, I love the way you love each other. It's just so fantastic. And so, I write a little rom-com here and there, and I would love to hear about him and who liked who first.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a good story. So we met in college.
Okay.
We both went to Eastern Illinois. I was a bartender, Kim.
Oh, good girl.
And hey, it paid the bills.
I was working as a hostess at Baker Square. So I was being very, not bartendery, but I bet I was making a lot less money than you were. So wise decision.
Yeah. I could make bank in college. It was great. And so I was working as a bartender, and he played co-ed softball on Sundays, and the good Christian boy he was, he would come to the bar on Sundays after softball because it was the only place to go and the only thing to do when you live in Southern Illinois. And so, he came in, and I think according to him, he thought I was cute, but he knew better to hit on a bartender. So,
just because of urban legend, or he just had been told by his mama, don't.
Probably not by his mom. I don't know if she knew he was in a bar, but more, I think, because bartenders get hit on a lot.
Yeah.
So sure. I think he was like weighing the odds of like,
I need to up my game.
Yeah. Like maybe play hard to get. And it worked. So I gave him my number. Well, actually I gave his friend my number to give to him.
Sure.
And he was like, that's weird. So he called, and we went to Austin Powers was our first date.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good first date movie.
Yeah,
a lot of laughter. You don't have to commit too much mental energy. No uncomfortable moments in the script. Good choice.
Yeah. You'll appreciate this too. He took me out to like the fanciest restaurant, which was like Applebee's in town.
I love it.
And so I ordered like a chicken dinner, right? Safe bet. Like not too much money, but a dinner, and not weird, like a salad. So he goes to order after I ordered, and he ordered a water and a salad. And I was like,
what did it mean? Was he worried?
Well, he didn't have enough money. And then I got like really panicky because I ordered like dinner. I ordered salad, Kim. So anyway, he left for school.
So worried for you in that.
He graduated.
Okay.
I know, right? Right. Okay. So he graduates, fast forward, graduates, moves home.
Wait, that was it?
Well, we dated.
Just Applebee's. Okay. You did. That was the beginning of dating a little bit.
Yeah. Like a couple of weeks. And then he moved home. It was like he graduated. So we met like right in the clutch.
Yeah.
And I dropped out of graduate school and moved up there a few months later. And then 2 years later, we got married.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. So interesting beginning. But Justin is, I think everything a girl wants. He reminds me a lot of Jesus, actually, which is weird, but humble servant, works really hard, great with the kids, loves the Lord, willing to help anyone, Enneagram 2. He's funny.
He's super funny.
Yeah. And we have disagreements too. Like we have like real things too. So, but he's just a good, solid, loyal, good guy. And I think
love that.
Yeah. Anybody that meets him would probably say that too.
I'm totally a fan. Also, Jesus probably would have ordered the salad. I think you're right. Just, I'm not going to let my needs for protein get in the way of our relationship. That was your first sign, really, of what you were getting into.
Yeah. Except sometimes I wish he'd ordered chicken.
It makes me so nervous for you in that moment. So much. Do you think that men also go through these processes in their minds of what should I order? How should I order? Because I have a lot of memories of dates really thinking far too much about, okay, spaghetti will splatter. The salmon, too expensive. But again, salad, not really the message I want to send. I don't want him to think that I'm going to get 5 dates into this and still just eating a couple croutons. I don't think men do this.
I don't know if they do, but I thought chicken was like a reliable.
It's super reliable.
Like neutral ground. Like men order chicken.
Yeah.
And then I didn't seem like too expensive,
Right.
but I was
Didn't
like
get the steak.
eating. I could cut it with a knife, so it wasn't spaghetti. I thought it was a safe bet.
I think it was. I blame you not at all for how that progressed. That was just a little big for his britches. Thought that Applebee's would be a perfect choice, and really we needed to work up to that.
Yeah, we should have just gone to La Bamba's and gotten a burrito.
That sounds delicious. Okay, you two, maybe part of why I love watching you together is because I feel like you just traveled a lot of miles in your short lives, right? I mean, I think you have moved into spaces that lots of folks haven't at this time in your marriage. You've been married how many years?
I'm guessing around 17.
Okay. So you're young pups yet. So tell us about your family. You've mentioned your beautiful children.
Yes.
And about I'd love to hear about why you and Justin seem to have this. There's just a depth to the way that you love each other in a shorthand. And my guess is that can be explained, at least in part, by the miles you've walked together. So tell us about your kiddos.
Yeah, we got married and built a house, and then the questions came, when are you having kids? And so we started along that journey. We had Jayden first. 3 years later, we had our daughter, Brooklyn, and we were just ecstatic to be new parents. But I think it's hard to be a new parent and wonder, like, is my kid doing what they're supposed to do? Are they hitting their milestones? Like, what the heck am I doing?
Right,
And
totally.
And so we were there. Jayden was about 3. Brooklyn was about 3 months old. And we took him to the 3-year-old checkup, and the doctor suspected something was up. And so after some visits down at a children's hospital, we realized that both of our kids had a rare terminal genetic disorder called Sanfilippo syndrome. And it was horrible. It was regressive. So we would have to watch our kids progress and do, bikes and have words and sing songs and eat and run and play. And then we'd have to watch it all disappear slowly. And so Jayden passed away. He was 11, and he passed away in 2017. And then 9 months later, my daughter, Brooklyn, she was 9, she passed away. So, it was obviously a decade-long journey of learning to work as a team for Justin and I. It was a lot of heartbreak, a lot of new normals. And the same birthplace for our greatest pain was also and continues to be our deepest joy. And so I'm just a really firm believer that joy and pain are birthed from the same place. And I wouldn't change anything maybe but the suffering. Like if there were any points of my kids actually suffering, I wish I could take that on myself. But the things that we learned and the opportunity that we have to be Jayden and Brooklyn's mom and dad, which we still believe we fully are, it I think was the greatest gift that God could have given me. Like, I'm so honored to be their mom. And I think Justin would say the same about being their dad. And then, as soon as we got the diagnosis, it was like our world had just shifted from black and white into full color. Like, we just saw things in a totally different way. And Justin also said, I don't think we're done adding to our family. And I'm like, you've got to be insane, because it's a genetic disorder. So each one of our children has a 25% chance of having Sanfilippo. So I prayed for a very long time. And I thought God and I were on the same page, which was no. And he changed that in me. And I just got to a point where I realized I loved Jayden. I loved Brooklyn, and I would love whatever child that God wanted in our home, and that child could come however that child needed to come, and that child could look however that child needed to look, and have a personality, a disability, whatever it was that God wanted, we would just love because that child would be ours. And so I got pregnant and had to wait about 10 months to find out if Ellie also had Sanfilippo, and she didn't. She was on the other side of the spectrum and is not even a carrier. So for us, that was a really interesting moment. Again, joy and pain, same place. So we were very happy for her, and then really sad for Jayden and Brooklyn, because now we had typical and terminal living in the same house, and we'd have this constant reminder of the youngest actually growing and surpassing her brother and sister developmentally. And then I'd have to teach her and walk with her through death and dying of her brother and sister. So our family has been through quite a bit, but it has for sure shaped who we are. And I think when it comes to Justin and I, it's part of what connects us so deeply is our love for our children and our pain.
I feel like I just had a masterclass in how to navigate a lot. And most of the things you mentioned, I don't want. And so talk to me about that. Talk to me about how when you say joy and pain come from the same birthplace, and you say it with conviction, and I can see the courage in your face, but I also know that's a hard one lesson. And I know you well enough to know that you love words and you value them. So that's not a throwaway comment for you. That's not something that you think I should hear. This is something that you have absolutely carved on your heart. And so did you always know this? And did Justin always know that? Like, I know you know that now, but talk to me about those first moments before you knew that. I want to hear about your journey. And also with Justin, that's hard for me to imagine in terms of walking all of those mile markers on your own, and also linked to someone shoulder to shoulder. I have a lot of friends walking through grief right now and loss. And the way we do this with our spouse or with the people that we love is this halting kind of odd dance. So how did you do that well? Because we all know folks who've walked through loss, and what remains at the end is not where they started. And they often don't remain together. So how did you do that? How did you know to do that? What did you do?
Well, the first answer, is always our faith. That's a foundation. That's the starting point is, we had to make a decision. Either we believed that God was who he says he was, or he wasn't. And that was the starting point to shape every sort of thing we either did or believed. We grieved very differently. And the best way I can describe it is our first reaction to when Brooklyn got her diagnosis. So we had received Jayden's, and then 3 weeks later we got Brooklyn's. Gosh. I was driving home. I had just had a cart full of groceries. It was raining. I had my mother-in-law in the car. I had Brooklyn in her car seat and Jayden. And I saw the phone from the children's hospital, the phone come through. I pick it up, and she's just like, she also has Sanfilippo. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I still remember the intersection I was sitting at when I got the call. I have no idea how I drove from that intersection home, but I got home. My mother-in-law was very gracious, and she unloaded my groceries. And I'm like, Joan, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm going to go have a cigarette because I am freaking out. So I'm like, well, now my mother-in-law,
now she does.
I smoke. I don't anymore, Kim.
Did you know I met your son in a bar? This might be a good time
and
to
I was
talk
a
about
bartender. It is though. It is, because that's part of it. I mean, if you're ever in the room with someone dying, there's always laughter too. So there's like these big highs and there's these big lows, and we can absolutely talk about the funny parts of something so tragic, because that's life.
Right.
It can't be segmented. It has to be integrated in order to survive, in my opinion.
I think that's a gift. I think that's a gift unique to how God wired us to be able. I mean, you've talked about the marriage of joy and pain, but I've seen over and over in my own seasons of grief that humor it's magical. I don't know how. I think God just gave us this beautiful gift that we seldom unwrap. That's the tragedy for me, when folks feel like they have to, like, oh, I've got to be really buttoned up right now, when really the opportunity to laugh about you going to get a smoke, that's what helped you breathe through that. I mean, not very well, asthmatically, apparently, since you were smoking. But in general, that's a gift to be able to move through those moments with humor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the little needle that we need in the balloon just to let the air out a bit. I also think there's a really tactful way of doing it. I think sometimes, if done incorrectly, can be really damaging.
Oh, for sure.
But especially when it's the storyteller using humor versus the audience, I think that's when it's appropriate.
We didn't want Joan to say, this guy I've heard about the other day. It was like, no, that would be ill-timed.
Right.
But I want you to feel the freedom that's a great way to say that the storyteller is allowed.
Yeah. And so she put my groceries away, and then we went over to the house, and I had obviously called Justin, and Justin was at the house, and I married into like Leave It to Beaver. So, everybody loves Jesus. They sing hymns. They're just absolutely what you think it'd be like to have 3 generations of Christians living on the same road.
Wow.
And, so Justin is laying face down on the ground when we walk in. He's weeping. And Joan just gets like over him and lays on her son, and she's weeping. And then the grandparents are just sitting in the couch, and we're just all shell-shocked. And I look over at Brooklyn, and she's in her car seat, and she's doing what every 3-month-old baby does, just like happy as a clam sitting there. And then Jayden thought it was a party. And so he's 3. So he's doing laps. He thinks it's so great that like Gigi Bud and Amma and Bubba, like everybody's in the room, and it must be for his birthday. Like he's just so excited, as we're just gutted sitting there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was in that moment when I looked at my son and my daughter, I said, oh, they're not gone yet. So I'm not going to let this destroy me. I'm actually going to be better because of this. Like I declared something like I just will not, I refuse to be crushed while they're still standing and breathing. And then there was like the next day, right? Like I had to fight sometimes to get there, and many seasons or months would pass where I wasn't thriving. I was literally just surviving, and that was okay. Right. But I kept returning back to this declaration I had made that day of like, oh, no. I refuse to lay down and die while they're here. But I had full permission after they were gone in my mind of like, I can break down then. But Justin, he completely disconnected that first year. He just could not even connect to the kids. He could not find any sort of joy or laughter. Like he almost moved away from us. Not out of the house, but like he just couldn't engage. He was severely depressed, crisis of faith kind of thing. And
so how did that work with you then? Because you've decided, you've planted your flag. This is not going to crush us, and we're going to just suck the marrow out of every single moment. And then the person with whom you're walking shoulder to shoulder is like, I'm going to bed. So how do you do that? How do we do that when we're grieving differently in our relationships?
I just had to like find a way to give him the grace he needed to go in the timing he needed. So yeah, there was frustrations, and most of the time it was like Walking Dead. Like he would just do what I asked, like go to the zoo or go to the museum. And
Wow.
you know, and he was still him. So he was still a servant heart and generous and kind. He just was crushed. And the reason he was because he couldn't protect us.
Yeah.
And I think as a dad,
right.
To understand, like, I can't protect my kids from death. Like,
just absolutely brutal.
I can't protect my wife from pain or from the toll that caregiving is going to take on her. Like, there's nothing I can do to make this better. And it wasn't until he went to two things. Number one is he went to a mission trip in India, and he watched and learned from people with leprosy. There was this colony that he was able to serve, which I believe served him even more. But they took care of one another. They had joy for one another, and they had like nothing except this radiant joy. And they shared what they had, and it like snapped him out of the woe is me. Like, whoa, there's more suffering in this world than just me. And then he also started praying for his friends. So he just said, you know what, God just knows my heart. He knows that I want Sanfilippo to be gone. He knows I want my kids to have a cure, and I'm not going to pray for it anymore. I'm going to pray for my friends. And he just started picking off his friends. And like anytime he'd want to pray for our kids, he'd start praying for them.
What?
And it was those two things that unlocked something inside of him where he like snapped out of it and kind of became more and more present to like, oh wait, I don't want to miss this. Wow. And then that's when he became like just awakened to the beauty of what was in front of us. And I don't even want to sugarcoat it, because everything that we've done, you know, we have the bruises and the scars.
Got the scars to show.
Yeah. You know, we had to fight a hard fight to keep the perspective. And so I get it. I get why people choose differently, because the other way is more truthful sometimes.
Right.
Like you have to believe in something bigger than yourself is at work, or else you can't.
So so talk to me about the practical. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm thinking of some friends who are just walking through these brutal moments. And I'm picturing you at the zoo when Justin is, sure, I'll get you a dumb popcorn.
Yep.
But not there, right? And in a moment, in a year where you really needed him to be there. I mean, when you're caretaking for little ones who aren't dealing with any health struggle, that is an exhausting spot to be, right? We all know that those early years they just drain you in beautiful ways, and also just a relentless way. And so you're at the zoo, Justin's not in a spot where you are. And you said you just had to decide to extend and find ways to extend grace to him. Practically, how did you do that? How do you get to that spot? And I'm sure that there are some times when, you also had to maybe gently nudge, maybe with a couple inappropriate words. I mean, I know you didn't do this perfectly, but I'm saying for those listening, how do you do that? How do you make that decision? What do you do to extend grace? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think grace and space look a lot alike. Just giving him some space to take the pressure off, to be where I am. And then I got my needs met other places. So, we had help. Grandma lived next door. We had friends and family just envelop us, and they were our life raft for a decade. I had friends that could hold my tears, so Justin didn't have to. And yeah, I'm sure I got it wrong plenty of times. If he was here to speak for himself, I'm sure he'd tell you I didn't do it well all the time. But I don't know. It was just so much, and I knew what he was going through, and I just had made like a different decision. But I don't even know if it was me. I think it was more of like, well, one person just needs to have an
Yeah.
anchor going, because I'm sure that when I break down, then he's going to have an anchor and I'll be able to lean on him.
And did you find that?
Yeah. Oh, totally. That's what made us such a good team. I think that's probably, when you see us together now, what it is that, it sounds so corny, but when he's weak, I'm hopefully strong, and vice versa. It's like we take care of each other in that way. And then when we can't, we look outside of ourselves. And I think that's another thing that people generally struggle with for a number of reasons, is either the community isn't there because they haven't chosen it. They haven't invited people in. We had to invite people in to our house. And then that was a marriage thing. It's like, there's somebody here all the time. And we never grew out of the toddler stage. So we had diapers for a decade, and so I think the divorce rate is like 80 to 90% in families with kids with chronic conditions, especially that pass away. It's a hard road, and there aren't a lot of supports, and we were very, very lucky, and we know that.
Right. I've looked at this. I told you this weekend, I texted Stefanie this weekend, listeners, and had been reading some of your writing that you did at the time. And I sat on my couch and I wept. And I know your story, and I wept for so many reasons. Probably the primary one is that I just really love you, and I love your family. And so hearing those words and just the gut-wrenching cry of your heart. Am I supposed to cry in a podcast?
Absolutely.
I surely will. So I just so appreciated your honesty, and I loved this unvarnished way. And today too, the way you're talking about this, that you're not cleaning it up and packaging it. But I also wept because I thought, where do you put what you know about God in that moment, right? Sorry, some people can cry and they sound like Elizabeth Taylor, and I cry and sound like I've been around cats a lot. So that's going to be unfortunate for everyone's ears this entire season. But so I've turned the prism of your grief, is what I'm saying. And I've held it up to light. And I know in my own life that God has this unbelievable track record of faithfulness. But I also know that when I've gone through moments where I'm saying, excuse me, where are you? It can be so hard walking through that and just deciding, I'm going to decide to remember who you are. So talk to the people who today are in that spot and saying, wait a minute, this is rubber hitting the road right in front of me. Where is God right now? What do I take from this? And how to walk through that in a way that I'll still have a soft heart on the other side.
Yeah. I think that, if somebody was sitting in front of me, I would spend far more time listening and holding space. Because I don't think that there's anything that I can say to convince somebody of that. It's something that they just have to decide and experience. And so what I do is hopefully hold a lot of space and ask a lot of questions. Because who am I to say, the worst thing somebody ever said to me is, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I'm like, come try living my life for a second. Because I feel like God gives me things.
Disagree. Right.
I get stuff I can't handle every single day because he's the one that's supposed to be handling it. And I think that's it's this theology of suffering that our world does not have very well. And so I still believe that God is who he says he is when he says he's close to the brokenhearted. even if I can't feel him and even if I can't see him. And that was a lot of my prayer. It's like, God, I am deciding to trust you based on what I know of you and based on the altars I've built in the past of right now in this moment. I'm mad, or I don't see you, or I feel lost because I feel so alone right now, but I would be talking to him,
right,
asking him like, where are you? And so I'm still in relationship, in dialogue.
Right.
And so I think that's ultimately what, at least for my faith, what was the guiding principle was like, go to him with all of this. And if you're going to him with all of it, he has a container to meet you in all of these places. And God the Father became very real to me because he was a parent that lost a child, a perfect child that didn't have to die. Had to die, but didn't have to die. Like he wrote the script. So he could have saved people in a different way.
Right.
But he chose this way. And so I understood on like this deep level, like you have sat where I have sat. Only you had a chance to like stop it, and you didn't on my behalf. And so just again, that whole theology of suffering and Jesus suffering, coming to the world in humility and leaving the world in humility, and like everything in between. And I just kept going back to the fact that God did not fall asleep when he made Jayden in Brooklyn. Like sometimes we think that physical disability or even death is like the worst thing in the world. And the truth is we all die. And the truth is people with physical disabilities have an illuminating light that if you choose to look, they're radiant. They actually help us take down our own masks. And so when I look at Jayden in Brooklyn, I'm not like, woe is me. I'm like, wow, what an honor, because they're fabulous kids. I just wish I had more time with them. And so, I think it's the way that we see the world that shapes so much of how we react to it. And so for people that are in this place, that it just looks so bleak, and it's so dark, I'd say, look for the pinholes of light, shift your focus. Like we can see light so much clearer in the darkness. So whatever it takes, to help you find gratitude, to help you find joy. I just firmly believe it's always there if we choose to look at it. It's always harder to like shift our gaze over there. But then once we do, we go, oh wait, right. Jayden, his eyes, his smile, and I don't know. And there's so much suffering in the same place. Like that's what actually makes it hurt. I think I've heard it say, someone say, grief is just love with no home. So the idea of losing someone is just like, where do I put all my love? Like that ache and longing. And so what comforts me is knowing that there is a place to put that longing, and that the story is not done, that I'm in the not yet. So all those things I think are what make me be able to laugh again and find joy. I mean, I laugh a lot, and I still weep when I hear songs. I still weep when I see their pictures every morning. But I'm alive. That's what being alive is.
Right. How have you helped Ellie navigate all of these things? Because she, first of all, I'm completely smitten by her, as you know, as are, I would say, 180% of the people who meet her. She's just absolutely such a delight. And she's had her own journey with this, right? Her own walk with this.
Yeah.
How do we do that? We've talked about kind of how we do that in a relationship with a spouse. But how do you do that with a kiddo? Is that ever evolving? Honesty. Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, we just never kept anything from her. I mean, we always made it as age appropriate as we could, but we had help too. I mean, lots of support, lots of people for her to talk to that, that weren't us. We had hospice teams, we had child life therapists, but we just created a space for her to talk about how she felt. We made a coping closet in the hallway. We cleared out the vacuum cleaner and the towels, and we decorated it with twinkle lights and her artwork of her and her favorite things. And she could go in there anytime she wanted and turn a little sign that said she was in there. And
how about that?
Sometimes, what's that?
I said, how about that? I was just thinking that I probably need a coping closet.
I know, we all do. We all do. I remember creating this thing with her because a lot of times, and I'm no child life therapist or anything like that, but what we'd notice is this moment where she'd have a meltdown, and I would kind of question, like, is this really about that? Or is this about that? And so it was navigating, like, are you really upset that you didn't get a third cookie? Or are you upset because your brother died? And he's like, I miss Jayden, and then the tears would come out and she'd put some language around it. But I gave her this code word. So anytime we were out and she was just reaching, we call it like a balloon. Anytime her balloon started filling up to capacity and she needed to release some air, she would just say out. And I knew that I had to switch out of whatever I was doing to pay attention to her request. And we would go back to her room and I'd say, get it out. And she would yell and she would scream and we'd count to 10. So do it again. Do it again. That's 8. Do it again. That's 7. Do it again. That's 6. And then she would get to a point where that anger and release started turning into tears. And then it started turning into weeping. And then she'd be like, I just miss Jayden. And then she's like, okay, I'm ready to go play and ride bikes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think mommy needs a coping closet.
Turn on the twinkle lights. I'm headed in.
Turn the twinkle lights on.
Wow.
So it was just like creating this safe space, and it dissipated. So she still, I mean, it's been years and she's still watching videos of her brother and sisters occasionally. And she's still talking about them and being sad they're not here and asking how old they'd be. And like, they're just part of our family. And we joke and we play and, oh, that reminds me of Biwa. And, her hair is so big, and we talk about them, and then we help her with the harder parts too. I remember making like a stick figure on a paper to explain cremation and burning it. And my hospice team was like, wait, what? And I'm like, well, I don't know how else to explain how this works. Like why her brother and sister are now like on our mantle. I don't like, so it was like, okay, how can I help a 5-year-old understand this? And she was part of everything, Kim. She saw, she was there. She saw it all. And I think honestly, I've watched other families make different decisions and quote, protect their child from seeing that. And maybe that's what they needed to do for their family. I'm not judging anyone. But I feel like she is so well adjusted and integrated and understands life and death in a way that even adults don't, because we created space for her to talk about it.
What a gift you gave to her for her whole life. The whole ding dong thing, right? I mean, she will, like I said, we all need the twinkle lights, but she knows how to put words to that. The image of you guys together in her room and you giving license. You crazy Midwestern woman. Most Midwestern women do not do that. And you did. You just opened the door and said, let her rip, sister. I mean, what a gift, Stefanie. You are such a great parent. I have 3 children. Would you like to parent them? Because I don't really feel super equipped today, but maybe lights. Maybe I should put up lights.
Yeah. Oh, Kim. Well, listen, I'm taking notes out of your playbook because your
Knock
kids
it
are
off.
Fantastic.
Oh, well,
Fantastic.
Anyway, before I came in here, I threatened them within an inch of their beings. If the dog barks while I'm doing this, it's on you. So yeah take a page from that. Threatening. Yeah. It's really good.
But I'm just giving you the highlight reel. I'm sure Ellie has something totally wrong that I do.
Well, I've only seen Total Beauty, and I've seen you in multiple high stress moments, and still you're just the real deal. I just love it. I want to circle back real quick to something you said earlier about, I'd love to hear more just as your student. Here I am, your friend and your student. How do I help other people who are right in smack dab in the middle of grief or of loss? I'm positive you have some zingers that were said to you that were extraordinarily not helpful, but I bet it sounds like you and Justin and Ellie had this beautiful surrounding of folks that really loved you well. And so teach us how to do that well. Now that you have you have this experience under your belt, and a long haul experience. This wasn't a weekend. This was a decade. And so you've been able to watch and see who does this well and who doesn't. And I would just love to learn from you. Tell us how to do that piece of life well with each other.
Well, let me say this. I am happy to do that. And I'm only going to give you the cliff notes from my community. So I'm the student of my community. It's not stuff that I've nailed or gotten right for others, but I can tell you what people did for us that was absolutely radiant. And I hope the rest of my life I will try to replicate how people showed up for us.
Okay.
So that's the caveat. I'm no expert. I've just been a witness. The first was there is a group of women, I think in my mother's church, I've narrowed it down, who have sent me an anonymous card with a gift card in it for the last 14 years. Like they're still doing it.
No.
And it's like to Ulta for $50 or Target, and they never sign a name. They never have a return address. It's always like birthdays or Christmas or just thinking of you for the last like 14 years.
Wow.
They have not forgotten.
Wow.
And so that is a big takeaway is don't forget. In fact,
hey, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yep.
Not forgetting. Are you talking about specific days? Like on my calendar, I have lost days,
yes.
right?
Yep.
Where I say to my friend, hey, I am thinking about you today. I'm praying for your heart. Is that's an okay thing to do?
100%.
Okay.
In fact, I wish that was just a normal thing. Just set your alarm clock for whatever. I mean, my friends do that right now. Every month on the 6th and the 13th, I get an emoji from like 3 or 4 friends, just saying, I'm thinking of you. And, I think we're afraid to say people's names because we think, oh, if I say it, I'm going to make them sad. No, they're sad. It's hovering right underneath the surface anytime.
Right.
And people want to talk about their kids. You want to talk about your kids. I want to talk about my kids. So it's not like saying someone's name that we love is going to be this tragic, like grief trigger. It's actually like, thanks for holding the space for that.
Okay. Got it.
You can also ask, like, are you comfortable talking about Frankie? You know, I'd love to, hear more about Frankie. And in fact, one woman that I talked to, this is her invitation to people. She says, introduce me to them. Oh, your son, Jayden, your daughter, Brooklyn, introduce me to them.
I love that.
What a beautiful invitation we can offer. The other, I think, is just to show up in tangible ways. Like we're really good at like the cards and the casseroles when somebody's sick, but with grief, there's a period of time from the passing till about 6 weeks that I believe God gives you like some sort of anesthesia or what's that called?
Yeah.
The medicine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where
just to help you get through it.
Yeah,
Emergency status.
Like a great for grief. And at 6 weeks, it starts to wear off. And so when we are beyond the cards and casseroles and everyone else has pushed the treadmill on their lives and they're heading full steam, the grieving are left behind to try to figure out how to walk again. And so if we can continue to remember that after 6 weeks, after 3 months, after 6 months, like people are still trying to get their bearings. And so just to acknowledge that and not pretend that it doesn't exist, and just leave space for it. It's okay if you want to be sad. that's a great invitation to a friend. Like, I'm going to have you over to the lake. You can sit here. If at any time, you get a wave of grief or you want to talk about your loved one, I'm here. And if you want to laugh and have fun, that's also okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, everybody's different, but the bottom line is like just asking and remembering and creating and holding space, and then not making it about you.
Right.
Like, oh, I've had people go, oh, well, yeah, I totally know. My cat died. Or
Ooh.
like as soon as you shift, and we do this because we're uncomfortable. So as soon as we shift the attention off of the grieving onto us, we've actually done a really big disservice.
Right.
And you do this so well, Kim. I remember sitting on my couch and I just kept talking and talking and talking, probably like I am on this podcast, because you are such a good space holder. And so we will all have a turn to be in both positions. Mm. So may we honor each other's grief well, so that when it's our turn, we get that same thing back.
Beautiful. If I hold space, it's probably because I watch you like a hawk. In fact, I'd love to hear about how you do this well in your work. I've watched you with folks who are just reeling from grief up at the Oaks. And I have seen how you care for them and how you listen to them. And interestingly, because of your position, I've seen you do that with people who have millions of people watching them and writing about them and paparazziing them. It's not a verb, but I write stuff so I can make up stuff, make up words. I've seen that. And then I've also seen folks who are wide-eyed and not even really sure how they got to the Oaks, right? So I've seen you step into that space over and over. And I'm wondering how that has worked in your present condition, in your present, not condition, in your present position, in your work. How does your love of and experience with and mothering Jayden and Brooklyn and Ellie, how does that transfer itself on the daily with what you do in your new job, which is not that new anymore, but
yeah. It's fun because I'm probably best known for Jayden and Brooklyn, and I used to do some speaking and stuff like that, and I'd share openly about them. But here at the Oaks, most people don't have access to my story, and they're coming to work on whatever they want to work on. And so I don't share my story. And that's intentional, unless somebody asks, of course, but I don't lead with that.
Right.
I just say, I'm Stefanie and I'm welcome to the Oaks. And so what I hope is that the light that is in me, all the things that I've learned from J&B, because they were my greatest teachers, that by how I receive others and hold space for them is in a direct correlation to all that I've experienced. It's my resume of a space holder, so to speak. And so for me, when I get outside of myself and realize it's not my job to fix, it's not my job to give advice, it's not my job to cheer up, it's not my job. My only job is to not talk and to be fully present to what they have to say, believing that that person across from me has everything inside of them to be able to navigate the life that they've been given. Mm-hmm. So when I look at you and go, she's got all she needs. She does not need my opinion. She does not need my 3 helpful tips. She really just needs the time and space and margin to be able to listen to herself well. Oh, it's like the pressure falls off. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, tell me more, and I use a lot of, breath. I'm like, just sit. Oh, right there in the silence. And that's what we don't have in our world. We don't have silence. We don't have margin. We don't have anyone not interrupting us. We have grossly neglected silence and our ability to pay attention to the still small voice. And that to me is what can be trusted. And so at the Oaks, my only job, I believe, is to set the table, to hold the frame, and to watch people paint whatever it is they want to paint. And And that is the greatest joy. There's nothing complex about that. And yet it's like the hardest thing for people to do sometimes.
You do it so beautifully. I am so grateful to you for how you are continuing to teach me. I'm so grateful for your friendship. And I'm hoping that every human being listening will somehow make their way to you at the Oaks, because you're right. It is physically, it's a beautiful space. But I think what sets it apart is you and your team and the people who just blow open the doors and say, we have room for you at this table. We want you to paint. We would love for you to get what you need. You do it so well, Stefanie. Thank you for doing this great work. And thank you for taking time to talk to me about it.